The Boys has always been fun, and this season I still thought it was pretty damn fun. But that's not really the problem though. Where it failed is in its ability this season to make me care. Which sounds dumb, but trust me, this gets a little complicated. Because to me, that's what really matters. I don't want to just turn the episode off, finish the season, and immediately stop thinking about it. The Boys has never exactly been amazing at this, but it's never been a glaring issue. This season, it's definitely glaring. It's a huge problem. From the things you hated to the things you loved, it's still a huge problem in every aspect of the season. But caring is a broad term. Writing-wise, what exactly do I mean by that? How do you make an audience care? And where did the Boys manage to go completely wrong at doing that? Part 1. The why. What are the Boys' goals? It's an easy answer. They want to take down Vought and Homelander, and that goal has never really changed. But the problem is, a goal isn't really what makes you care. It's the why behind the goal that makes you care. Here are those whys in Season 1.
Not long after that, Rebecca went missing and has remained so ever since. One way or another, Mr. Butcher, I believe Homelander was involved.
These whys are motivations. These motivations are what create the joint goal of working together against Vought, each in their own way. Huey trying to do it morally, Butcher trying to do it at all costs, and Annie trying to do it while still trying to fulfill her dream of being a hero in the Seven. So really these motivations for each of them are what create the story. Without them, they don't have a goal. Without a goal, there is no story. But they don't just create the conflict between Vought, they also create conflict between themselves. Butcher trying to make Huey more like him into hating all soups, meaning he also is against Annie purely because she's a soup, while Huey is falling in love with Annie while also feeling guilty for falling in love with the superhero right after one just killed his last girlfriend, and also because of how Butcher is affecting him, and Annie being clueless to all this and being clueless of Huey using her, and then having to catch him on Vaught's orders while also having fallen in love with him, and also realizing Vought is not the good guys, and now Butcher is trying to pull them apart. See how their motivations give them the same antagonists but different viewpoints and methods in achieving their goal, which creates conflict between each other. Last season did this super well too. But what are those motivations this season? Well, there really aren't any. You can assume those motivations are the same as the first season, but Huey isn't going after A-Train anymore and doesn't even mention Robin. Annie's out of the Seven now, so she's not struggling with hating Vought while also wanting to fulfill her dream. And Butcher is fine. We're gonna get to Butcher later. Last season had the motivation of his dead family in the forefront, and you can say that that's still his motivation, and that's probably true. But it's not something that's explored at all anymore. Kimiko is here because Frenchie's here, and I have absolutely no idea why Frenchie has ever been here. So this season, for each character, either there is no motivation or it's rarely mentioned. They're kind of just the good guys because it's what they do and it's what they've been doing, and I guess that's just supposed to be enough. So they have the same goal, take down Vought, but this time without a strong reason why. Meaning, one, there's never a path for me to care about anything happening in the main storyline of taking down Vought. In the first season, murder, rape, and murder, and then sexual assault to either our protagonists or their loved ones make it pretty damn easy for me to care about their goals of taking down Vought. And two, because they all have the same goal but no conflicting motivations, besides Butcher, who again we'll get to, there are no natural conflicts between any of them. I say natural because the writer's approach to fix this was to do it artificially. Annie gets mad at Huey for cheating on her, even though this is completely not his fault at all. There is no way he could have known, especially when she has her memories. And Huey was basically sexually assaulted, and Annie is mad at him for that. But yeah, that was one of those attempts. The writer's other artificial change was to quote-unquote fix the core problem of missing motivations by giving them motivations in other ways. Part 2. The other ways. So season 4 is every character invested in a bunch of things that just don't matter at all. Frenchie and Kimiko have their assassin guilt, Huey has his mom coming back and his dad's death, Annie has her charity, really doesn't have anything besides half an episode where he almost leaves, and again Butcher we will get to. So I want to go over each one and why I think it's so terrible, even when it's not actually that terrible. You'll see what I mean by that in a second. So I'll do this worst to best. I get the feeling everyone watching this can already guess what the first one is, or maybe you can't because you already forgot about it. Big surprise. This is the most boring thing The Boys has done so far. And it sucks because for a show that not so very subtly makes fun of conservatives, it puts me on the same side as a bunch of homophobes. I'd be like, damn, this Frenchie and Colin storyline really sucks, and I'd hear, yeah, look at the woke agenda ruining our shows. But Colin really does suck, and I don't think I need to make an argument for that. He's just not really a character. He's a plot device. And the other seasons when they had Frenchie's past come back to bite him, it wasn't the best, honestly, but it did at least matter. It was integrated into the main story. It was Lamplighter before, last season it was his boss coming back, and then Butcher working with her. This season, it just doesn't matter. You could remove it and nothing about this story changes. And to clue you in, get used to hearing that. Next up is Kimiko. She's also going through some guilt over killing some people in her past, and she gets attacked by this girl, and then she has therapy, but we only get one scene of that, and she gets drunk one time. I'm not really sure what the attempt was here. Like, she's getting therapy to fix her speech, but to do that, she needs to confront her past, which can definitely work. And maybe Kimiko not being able to speak almost gets someone killed, like when he had a panic attack. So that way, her struggle is included into the story, and she's pressured to confront her past. But she just has therapy and then ends up being able to speak because Frenchie is kidnapped. So it didn't really matter. And both Frenchie and Kimiko kind of just resolved their guilt about hurting people in their past by talking a couple times without actually resolving it with the people that they hurt. Like, Frenchie gets beat up by Colin and then he just goes away. Kimiko fights this girl and then she just goes away. Season 2 had a similar thing going on with Kimiko with her brother, but the reason that worked is because her brother got his powers from Homelander, who was trying to give a bunch of foreigners Compound V, and then Stormfront murdered him in front of her. So it was a function of the main story through Homelander, and it gave Kimiko a strong motivation going forward, relating her to the main story, through her hate of Stormfront. Annie January. So Annie is invested in her charity, the Starlighters House, I think is what it's called, and she's struggling with leading as Annie or as Starlight. But after the episode where she gets ousted for her abortion and beat up Firecracker for it, Annie never even mentions her charity being destroyed. Her charity had nothing to do with the plot. You know what did though? The Starlighters. So imagine if Starlight was struggling to be an icon for half the country, how her actions affect the world, how she has to deal with being that leader and being constantly in the public eye. That's all kinda there, but not really. At least definitely not after the first couple episodes. Annie also has a history with Firecracker, who, guess what, is the icon for the other half of the country. You know what would be really cool? If that relationship meant something. It would be really cool if their relationship or anything Annie cares about this season had anything to do with the story. There was one thing when Starlight attacked Firecracker which did have an effect on the story, which is why I'm ranking it here. But it had a very, very minor effect. Starlight makes this deal with Singer, and then it's broken in the same episode because of her attack, and then we just forget about it. And nothing to do with the charity, with the Starlighters, with Firecracker, goes anywhere. It didn't matter. Huey. This was the biggest side plot with this whole thing of his mom coming back and then his dead dad. And I'm ranking it here because it was interesting, at least. Simon Pegg did a great job, and this is emotional while it happened. But really, just because of that, it just pissed me off more about how little this ended up mattering. Because a lot of the stuff here should matter just based off of how human beings work. Huey's mom coming back after like 20 years should change him. His dad dying should change him. And the craziest part to me here is that Huey brings Compound V with the purpose of injecting it in his dad to save his life. He struggles with that, but knowing the risks and knowing that everyone told him not to do it, he still brings it, and then his mom uses it. And because of their choices, a bunch of innocent people are now dead. But not just dead, Huey's dad was turned into a murderer in his final moments alive, when he could have just gone out naturally, in peace, like a normal human being, had Huey and his mom not stepped in and not made him a panicked killer. So maybe I'm alone in this, but I really thought this would mean something, that Huey would change in some way because of this, or his mom would change in some way, that there would be some guilt over what they did, that there would be some consequences for this at all. But nobody cares. Nothing happens. Sticking with the theme here, remove all this from this season and nothing changes. Homelander is last, which means his little side plot was the best. Also, because it was by far the most interesting. So the beginning of this season was building the idea that Homelander wants to remove this weakness of his constant need of approval. He's breaking down and eventually decides to go to where it all started. At the end of this scene, Homelander finds out why he's obsessed with needing approval. It was because psychologists implanted that need in him as a kid as a means to control him. This is really cool and really scary. And the scene and episode were amazing. Anthony Starr did a great job, and I want to emphasize the idea that in a vacuum, this was great. But I also want to emphasize that because of how that greatness was wasted. Because it looked like this season was going to be about Homelander trying to disband that need of approval. Now that Homelander knows this, what will he do? Is he now another step closer to removing that need now that he knows the cause of it? And if he removes that need, what kind of monster would he become? I don't know. It never progresses past that moment. In other words, it didn't matter. I'll say it again, you can remove it and nothing about this story changes. So every single main character besides Butcher, who again we will get to, spends a ton of screen time doing shit that does not matter. Each motivation and each inner struggle are isolated to its own corner and are irrelevant to the real story. Whether or not those plots are boring or really interesting, it's still the same problem. They're forgotten and they're distracting from the real story we're supposed to care about, all because they don't serve any real purpose. Part 3. Active characters. Okay, so take away emotional investment for a second, okay? This season doesn't do that. We get that now. Even if a character doesn't have that, it doesn't mean we still can't find them interesting. We don't even know about Becca until like halfway through the first season, but during that half, I definitely still found Butcher interesting.
This is like that scene in The Matrix. Now, you could take the fucking red pill, right? Spend the rest of your life jacking off, crying into your chai tea, green latte, what the fuck. Or you could take the blue pill. Or was it the red pill anyway? Take the other pill and quit being a cunt.
Which pill do you want me to take?
Just quit being a cunt, that's what I'm saying.
So, how does that work? Well, for one, they can just be funny. The Deep is just comedic relief and everyone likes him. But not every character can or should be funny. So the other way is they drive the story forward. Take a look at what the main storylines are in each season. In season 1, it's about Butcher and Huey's fight to take down Vought, mainly by exposing Compound V. They plant a bug, they blackmail Popclaw, they use Annie and hack her phone, and Butcher goes off and kidnaps Stillwell. And it's also about Annie trying to fight to be a hero while being in Vought. She tells the world the Deep sexually assaulted her, she fights A-Train in the finale, she blackmails Stillwell when Stillwell tries to fire her. In season 2, Butcher is trying to find Becca's location to go and rescue her. Huey, MM, and Annie are looking for information on Stormfront. Annie is finding proof of Compound V and leaks it to the whole world. And the whole squad goes after Becca and Ryan, creating these final fights in the end. And in season 3, Huey and Butcher take V, find and wake up Soldier Boy, and then team up with him to go after Homelander. while wants to go after Soldier Boy for the murder of his family. The point I'm trying to get across here is the decisions they make in going after their goals create the conflict. And conflict is story. So they make the story. It's their story. But this season, partly because like we talked about, they don't have any motivations relevant to the plot, it also just straight up isn't their story. This season's plot is about Homelander basically trying to take over America. And when he hires Sage, the rest of the season is their goal driving the story forward. And really, it's mainly Sage. And the boys just keep trying things to stop it and fail, not actually doing anything. In episode 1, they try to kill Vicky and they can't. They try to spy on Sage, are found out, and then fight and leave. They try to spy on a meeting between Homelander and Vicky, and Huey is found out and escapes. Then they find out Firecracker is a pedophile and try to blackmail her, but she doesn't care and neither does anyone else. They go to the farm to get the soup-killing drug thing, but it never comes into play this season. They find out about the internment camps by infiltrating the political meeting. That also does not matter this season. Basically, you could have the boys chillin', playing 2K the entire season, and nothing really changes the end outcome. Their decisions don't have positive effects or negative effects on the story. They just don't have an effect. Nothing they do moves the story in a new direction. That direction is decided by Sage, and it never moves off that direction, even when Sage is fired. By the way, I just found it so dumb that Sage somehow planned all of this. Like, her intelligence was cool and believable in the beginning, but then somehow she just predicts that Butcher is gonna go evil, get tentacles, and then kill Newman. Twists aren't cool when they need to break logic to exist. That was a tangent. Anyways, the only actually large shifts in the story that come from the good guys, the boys, are coming from Butcher. His effect on Ryan and therefore Homelander, and then like we just said, him snapping Newman in half. So honestly, Butcher kinda seems to be the only exception to all of this. He's emotionally invested in the main story through Ryan, he doesn't have an irrelevant side plot, and he's an active force in the story. So Butcher was great then, right? And not really. Part 4, Butcher and Ryan. To me, and I think most people, the best part of the boys has been Butcher versus Homelander. And it's pretty easy to see why. It's just consistent. Huey is over Robin and kinda just goes through a new arc every season, always ending up to be the same guy that he was at the end of season 1, so we really never have a specific motivation to be invested over the course of 4 seasons. We just have each individual season. Annie is the same way, Frenchie, Kimiko, all pretty much the same. Some of these characters don't really change at all through the course of the show, but at least for Huey and Annie, they had their main arc through the first season, which basically became their default, and then through the next couple seasons, they'll have some struggle, they'll overcome it, and they'll go back to that default. Like last season, Huey's arc was about dealing with his masculinity and wanting to stop feeling weak, and then he overcame that and went back to that default. But Butcher was always different. His motivation has never really changed. Unlike the others, he never defaulted into this good guy for good guy's sake motivation. It's always just been about Becca.
This is about Becca, isn't it? It's always about Becca with you.
In season 3, Butcher makes the mistake of letting his lust for revenge push aside his promise to raise Ryan. The consequence of this is that now Ryan has joined Homelander, and a second Homelander is very, 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 very bad news for the world. So, following that, the implication was that Ryan is becoming like Homelander. But watching this whole season, Ryan is absolutely nothing like Homelander. They pretty much go out of their way to make Ryan seem as good as humanly possible. And even when it seems like Homelander found a way to twist his sense of justice into punishment, making him more like Homelander,
I want you to slap him.
Bonnie? Oh, fuck.
Do it again.
Okay.
Again.
Homelander. Oh, fuck me. Sorry, stop, please.
this goes nowhere. In the next episode, Ryan does something very good again.
Your family isn't your enemy. Your family is all you've got.
And it's not even just that Ryan is a very good kid, he also has a great relationship with Butcher this season. In episode 1, he's already telling Homelander that he doesn't want Butcher to die because his mom loved Butcher.
My mom loved him.
What about you?
Butcher does pretty much everything right this season. So throughout this season, Butcher never really has a reason to be torn between using the virus or not using the virus, between the devil or the angel on his shoulder, because he never has a reason to be torn. Everything with Ryan's going great. So in the finale, in the climax of this struggle, it doesn't really feel climactic because it never really was a struggle. For one, the idea that Mallory would call Ryan a son, and after showing how kind and great this kid is all season, he can just snap her neck, stare her down, and walk off without a hint of shame, I just can't buy that. And two, this happened because of what Mallory said, a character that we don't really care about, not as a consequence of a choice Butcher makes. So, the climactic moment of this thread between Butcher and Ryan had Ryan do something that wasn't developed properly, and even though this is Butcher's arc, it happens completely independent of what Butcher says or does to Ryan. Imagine if Homelander was actually winning him over a little, if Ryan wasn't so good and had a more strained relationship with the Butcher as an actual consequence of what Butcher did last season. So one, Butcher actually does struggle between killing Ryan before he gets too strong or still trying to keep his promise and help him. Then he can keep choosing to try to keep his promise, but when he is the one to tell Ryan the truth, when Ryan starts to think that this is the only reason Butcher's been trying to get close to him this whole time, that Butcher got close to him only to make him fight his dad, to make him try to kill his dad, having become more like his dad, he also has grown to hate being lied to, and now Ryan does this.
I'm sorry.
And now Butcher is left with only one remaining option. Part 5. It was all just setup. Honestly, all the problems this season can come down to the idea that, like I said, they don't really care about making you care about this season, because the priority is to get the right plot events in place for the endgame to happen. It's setup. But, you still gotta tell a story and have some emotional things happen, so some relevant side plots are thrown into the mix. Which is why I'm pretty confident next season won't have these same problems, because there's nothing to set up anymore. But I also don't think this is an excuse. Good writing can make the plot happen as it's supposed to happen, while still making us care about what's going on. That's actually kind of the broad definition of good writing. And I just don't think they met that definition. The boys this season really only have maybe 2 episodes worth of screen time on things that actually will affect the story in any way. And even in that little screen time, there was no reason for me to actually care about any of it. So yeah, that's it.